Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. Okay, so this video is going to be about intercepted planets. This is something that's always fascinated me because I have several planets intercepted along with my nodal axis and my Lilith. So dealing with these interceptions has been a long process, but in my awareness that I have gained over researching for this video, I processed a lot and I have such a greater understanding of these particular placements for me. So I want to help you, first of all, identify if you have any interceptions, but then I'm going to describe what it feels like and what you can do about it. And I also offer personal natal chart readings and synastry readings. If you're interested in that, there will be more info in the description. But let's define an interception. An intercepted planet is in a sign that is not on the cusp of any house. This only works with quadrant house systems. This isn't going to be applicable if you only use whole sign or equal houses. This is for house systems like Placidus or Coke, so it'll really only be relevant if you've looked at your chart that way. However, if you've only used whole signs, I definitely recommend looking at your chart, at least in Placidus, and seeing if you do have any interceptions, and just looking at the overall nuance that can add to your chart if you're only familiar with it in a non-quadrant house system. Because honestly, the realizations that I've had in preparing for this have been life-changing, seriously. So if you have one sign intercepted, you're also going to have the opposite sign intercepted. This is an entire axis that is essentially not blocked, but it's harder to get there. There are extra steps. So developing awareness is the main thing that you want to do when you do have an intercepted planet, because it does take attention and effort and a little bit of analysis. Do note that it's possible to have signs intercepted even with no planets in the sign. It's a more subtle feeling, but it is something you'll feel. So understanding how to deal with an interception can also help a lot. So how this tends to manifest is that this particular planet's energy is harder to access in a way that's going to actually be the best for you. And I want to clarify, this is different from having a retrograde planet, because a natal retrograde planet can kind of sound the same if you're just looking at a description of what interception versus retrograde means. But if you have a planet in retrograde, it essentially needs to be internalized, processed, figured out before it can be externalized. There's an internal process that comes with it naturally, which can feel like delays, or things are more complicated or take more effort, but this is not the same as an intercepted planet. The difference here is that let me use an analogy. If you think of the house that your intercepted planet is in as a literal house, say for example, you have Aquarius Mars in a house that has Capricorn on the cusp. The analogy here is like the Aquarius Mars wants to behave like an Aquarius Mars, but it's essentially being judged through Capricorn. The analogy is like, say an authoritative parent, the Capricorn wants to control the Aquarius, so it's essentially projecting its values onto its child, like the sort of parent that wants to live vicariously through their child. It's not the best analogy because it's all happening within you. You are Capricorn, you are Aquarius, whatever sign, whatever house, whatever planet. The point is that for you, the house is going to be ruled by the values of the previous sign, but your planet is in the next sign. So typically it would be able to express itself through that sign's energy, but that sign doesn't have a house to express itself through. It has no outlet. Here's a more clear example if that's confusing. I have Taurus and Scorpio intercepted. Let's take my intercepted Jupiter and Scorpio that I have in a Libra house. So while my Jupiter essentially tells me that fortune opportunities for me come through raw authenticity, through being real with people. But it's in a Libra house, and Libra just wants harmony. So the frustration here for me is that I'm essentially blocking opportunities for myself if I'm behaving in a Libra way rather than a Scorpio way. If I'm overly concerned with keeping the peace, what people think of me and pleasing them, then there's this uncomfortable feeling where the Scorpio wants to come out, but it's being judged based off of the Libra values. So this is what an interception is. It feels stunted or like it's harder to get there. It's not completely impossible to access. And if you've been working on that sign's energy for any other particular reasons, you might find it easier to access the sign, but it always takes a little more than we want it to. But the awareness is how we shift this within ourselves. And it's interesting all of the different ways that this can happen because it can actually be quite unpredictable. Take my example again. If there's a particular, say, social anxiety that I have, it's not going to be triggered by every single person. It's going to be triggered by familiar patterns. I'm using this example of other people because I'm talking about the seventh house and relationships. But let's find a different example. I'll just make it personal and go to the other side. In my first house, I have Mars intercepted in Taurus with my Aries rising ruling it. So I judge myself because I work slowly, but I expect myself to work fast. So what you want to do in order to solve this problem, look at your intercepted planet, look at the sign it's in, and compare how you behave versus how that sign would want you to behave. If you're acting more off of the house cusp sign rather than the planet sign, it's going to feel disconnected and uncomfortable and ultimately not true to you. And we always want to embody the sign that each planet is in because this shows us our most natural way of functioning. And it essentially aligns us with like the proper path, just energetically by being ourselves in the way that we're intended to, rather than the ways that we're judging ourselves for. And everybody is meant to be totally different. Like we are all a completely different mix of signs and whatever. Nobody's meant to be the same. But of course, people judge themselves based off of what is the standard. Another thing that you can do is try to mentally prepare yourself by kind of determining in advance how you should behave or what would be the best way to handle whatever it is that you're dealing with. And to really like consistently engage in this, to try to keep it in the forefront of your mind as much as you can. I think that creating a habit out of that, it really heals the placement. Honestly, just the awareness changed so much for me. But it's going to be very specific and particular to you, whatever your interceptions are and what's going on. So let me give a brief example of each planet and what you might be dealing with if it's intercepted. So having your sun intercepted is difficult. You might not even feel like your sun sign. You could struggle with confidence or with your sense of purpose, your recognition, and like feeling special and proud of yourself. And this one, I mean, it's really tough. You could go your whole life judging yourself through the lens of the sun sign that's before yours. The moon, also extremely difficult because this is your emotional processing. The way you express emotions, the way you feel emotions. There has to be a lot of intentional, like, cultivation of comfort for yourself. What is comfort for you genuinely? Not what you think it should be, but what is it really? And how much does that align with the sign that your moon is in? To have Mercury intercepted, this is communication and even our thoughts. So there can be a difficulty communicating like the way that you think you should versus the way that you naturally do. And there can actually be a lot of struggle with just mental clarity in general. This does get better with time, but the more you can focus on really embodying your Mercury sign, the smoother things are going to work out. Venus intercepted, this can be like relationships are elusive. It's difficult to know what it is maybe that you're doing wrong, but this is also our pleasure and our sense of value within ourselves. So if you're judging your worth based off of the sign before your Venus sign, that would not be doing anything for your self-esteem. So definitely try to recognize all the ways that you really identify with your Venus sign. To have Mars intercepted, this is about our drive and our motivation. So if we're trying to motivate ourselves through the wrong sign, or if we're judging our work ethic based off of the wrong sign, it's discouraging. It's incredibly discouraging. This can prevent you from really doing what you want to do in life. It can be hard to take initiative. You could struggle with assertion or even the way that you handle anger. So again, try to embody your Mars sign. To have Jupiter intercepted, like I mentioned before, this is our opportunities. This is our luck. Jupiter is the lucky planet because this is the area where we have our eyes open to opportunities and bring them in. So if our eyes aren't open to the opportunities because we're not really being ourselves entirely, it's like we don't even recognize how abundant we could be. You could even have a lot but not really fully feel that. And this can even be like recognizing the support that you have after the fact or never even realizing it at all, feeling like you're unsupported or you're unlucky. And this also deals with belief systems. So if you have any sort of tangled religious issues, it's really important to go into that and determine your truly aligned belief system, what the truth is for you. If you have Saturn intercepted, it's like Saturn plus even more blockages and delays. You could feel really unsure about your long-term goals, or even the idea of boundaries or limitations, whether that's boundaries you set or boundaries that seem to be set for you. And there can also be issues with discipline and also with authority figures. But Saturn always takes time, so as long as you're focusing on your Saturn, we don't really look to our Saturn sign that often since the house is gonna be more immediately relevant. But the sign that Saturn in is also incredibly important. And then if you have your Uranus intercepted, it could feel like your sense of like individuality or rebellion or nonconformity is impossible, blocked, something you can't trust. It's kind of like a difficulty within your most authentic self-expression, really leaning into your weird side that could feel like it's unacceptable, or you could struggle with embracing change in the way that this planet really does. Things could feel heavy, or you could not feel like yourself. And really authentic self-expression, this takes time to develop anyway, as we just build confidence in ourselves as people and learn who we are. But this can make that process extra difficult, especially with the outer planets being in the same sign for so long, because they take so long to go around the sun. These are planets that larger groups of people are going to have the same sign. But with Uranus in particular, it's like belonging to that group. You could feel like an outsider. With Neptune intercepted, this can be even more confusion than regular Neptune. This can feel like your intuition is blocked, your creativity, your imaginative side, the part of you that recognizes the more spiritual side of life and a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. And you could absolutely struggle with Neptune-type issues like unclear boundaries, escapism. You could have a really hard time with meditation or with even trusting your inner guidance. So it's very important to look at the house that you have Neptune in, because this is going to be an area of very deep significance for you. There's purpose in that house. But if it feels like your sense of purpose is blocked, or if you know and you feel it but you struggle with actually trusting it and accepting it, that's definitely something to focus on. And then we have Pluto intercepted. Pluto deals with our sense of deep transformation and our personal power. So if you're afraid, if you have control issues, this can take facing difficult truths. And not just that, but confronting things that we don't want to look at. There's a strong fear of loss here, whether that is loss of anything in particular that you might worry about, or a loss of control. But when we have truths that are hard to look at, things that we don't want to feel or face, what solves the problem but looking at them and facing it? Then we know if we even have something to be afraid of in the first place. But to be afraid and to feel like you can't embody that power that you have through the sign you have Pluto in. And Pluto is generational. Lots of people are going to have Pluto in the same sign. And this will be like your sense of feeling at one with this collective energy. But feeling empowered, feeling like you can face anything and that you're being the most authentic version of yourself. You're not lying to yourself. You're not lying to other people. You're truly embracing the reality of who you are and who you're meant to be. This takes change, it takes introspection, it takes transformation. But when we go through those hard things, then, it's like we know we can handle it. Pluto builds resilience. But if you're afraid of even going there in the first place, then you're going to continue living in that fear. So definitely confront any fears you might have in that Pluto house area of life. And I just want to state here, the entire reason why I'm teaching astrology in the first place is that I want everybody empowered. I want everybody to be as much in alignment with who they truly are as they possibly can be. And interceptions can really block that. It can make us feel like we're not ourselves, or like we don't even know who that is, which is why I love natal charts, because it's literally a blueprint. And especially right now, especially if you're feeling fear right now, focus on what you can change. Don't worry about what you can't change. There is a lot going on energetically. Things are shifting. Things are changing. Don't be afraid. If you're into numerology, this year 2025 is a 9, okay? And that's more Pluto. Things sometimes need to get worse so they can be broken down, so that they can be built anew. And what this year is about, death, rebirth, preparing for what's new. Be the best version of yourself. Focus on confidence and empowerment, being the strongest you. And you do that by being you. It's so simple, but it is so complicated. So if you experience interceptions, if you feel what I'm talking about, super curious, let me know your experience with your intercepted planets. And also, if you're still watching, did you go through that Leo full moon that just happened February 2025 and like have a crazy transformational experience, especially creatives or artists, whether you consider yourself one or not? Because I had a major breakthrough. Absolutely love it. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Thank you. I hope this makes sense and helps. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support. I really, really love you. Bye.